my channel. My name is Emily and this is a very exciting video because it is the season finale of the November writing diaries. So if you've been following along on my journey over the last month and a half, I guess, I set out to do 3, technically 4 things this month as a part of my November writing challenge. If you are new to my channel, thank you so much for being here, number 1. Number 2, this is probably not the video to start with. I would highly recommend you go back and watch at the very least, the first video in my series that goes into a little bit more detail about the challenge, how I'm tracking things, my work in progress, etc., etc. And then come back to this one after because it'll make a whole lot more sense. That said, if you want to start with this one, that's your prerogative. So in the month of November, I set out to write 50,000 words, which was later revised to 30,000 words. Write something every single day, write outside of the house at least 4 times, and not quit on myself. So those are kind of the 4 things that I lived by for the month of November. I'm filming this in December, like late December, so apologies for the delay. In my defense, I filmed this video. This is now the third time. So it is coming to you much later than I expected, so I hope it is worth the wait. So I'm very excited to reflect back on the last month or so of my writing challenge and let you know what worked, what didn't, and really just how I'm feeling about everything. No writing's been done since I finished this challenge. Not really by design. I think I intended when I first started the challenge to have November be my jumping off point and then to continue writing all the way through into the new year, forever and ever and ever. That's not what's happened. Work got really busy. I expected that this would happen, but work always gets really busy right before the holidays. All of the chaos of the holidays really just doesn't leave a ton of extra time to pour into your creative pursuits. So I'm hoping to get some R&R and come back in 2025 renewed and ready to go. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the stats. First things first, total word count. In the 30 days of November, I wrote 30,015 words. Out of 50,000 words, puts me at 60.3% of my weighted target. However, I did revise, I think it was partway through my 3rd week, I revised my goal from 50,000 to 30,000, and I'm happy to report, obviously, I did hit 30,000 words. I'm really excited to hopefully try the 50,000 word count goal again next year. My daily average for November was 1,001 words per day. 1667 is how many you're supposed to get each day, but for the most part, I'm usually sitting between 500 and 750, so the 1,001 words is still a huge improvement for me, so I'm taking that as a win. My total manuscript by the time I was finished, I started with roughly 19,000 words, was 46,330 words to date. My longest streak was 15 days of writing, which brings me to my second goal, which was write every single day. I did not achieve that goal either. I missed 3 days. All things considered, 27 out of 30, not bad. My next goal was write in public 4 times in the month of November. Very happy to report that this one gets a big fat check mark because I did do this. Shout out to my friend Jamie, because without her I probably wouldn't have, I won't even lie. So thank you, Jamie. And then finally, cry without quitting. I did do this actually, and I'll do you one better. I didn't cry 1 time this month about writing related things. Those are the stats. I used TrackBear to track all of my word counts for the month. I did a challenge page with a couple friends of mine, and in future videos, I'll probably end up sharing a little bit more of my TrackBear dashboards and stuff like that. Moving forward, when I'm just tracking my own writing, I will definitely share that with you guys. Okay, let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly of my writing challenge. So first things first, we'll start off with the good. One of the first things I wanted to talk about was the momentum that a challenge like this gives you was an unexpected, huge positive, and I think is one of the main reasons that I wrote as much as I did this month. I don't want to downplay it and say that it's not a daunting goal, because honestly, the day that I hit upload on the very first video, episode 1 of this series, Preptober, I was terrified because now that meant I had to do the thing. It wasn't enough to talk about doing the thing. That wasn't going to cut it anymore. I needed to actually do it because now I put it in a public forum. But at the same time, I think building a consistent writing habit can be really difficult unless you have sort of set rules around things, so just at least my experience. So knowing that I needed to hit a certain word count every single day, that I needed to make it a priority to get out of my house, get out of my space after work. So I kind of knew it was always around me, and that in turn I think gave me a lot of momentum. I would stop in the middle of a chapter and I would just be excited to kind of keep going. It pushed me, I think, in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do for myself outside of the confines of a challenge like this. Number 2, this one is a little sappy, and that is community. I mean, this is my writing group and also AuthorTube and the community here online. So doing live writing sprints, doing writing dates with my friend Jamie, having that in-person accountability really helps to turn a super solitary activity like writing into something that feels like a fun little club, honestly. Watching videos, creating videos, doing writing sprints, attending people's live writing sprints and hearing them talk about their projects really just makes you feel immersed in the world of writing and creating in a way that just made me so excited to leap into my projects. And I think that when I look back on this period of my life, I think that's going to be something that really sticks out for me, and I'm so grateful that that was something that I had for this challenge. So if you were somebody who's considering starting an AuthorTube channel, I'm obviously like a super newbie. I noticed a huge difference in just how I felt in general this month, having AuthorTube behind me, I guess. So highly recommend joining if you are at all on the fence. Sorry, my lips are really dry. Because it was probably one of the best things I could have done for myself at this current point in my writing journey. Okay, number 3, that is narrative. This is kind of vague. I guess narrative could mean many different things, but I think when I wrote these notes, what I was kind of thinking was just spending so much time immersed in the world of your story gives you so much freedom to tinker with things and look at your plot holes from different perspectives and constantly be working through like deep character work, plot holes, figuring out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and just giving yourself time to experiment. Sit down and see what happens. Like, I knew that every single day, no matter what I was doing, barring of course any like major life things or illness, I knew that I was going to have time to play in my document at some point throughout the day. And so I was kind of thinking about what that would look like in the back of my mind while I was doing other tasks. I worked through a lot of plot holes by just giving myself time in my story. So if you're somebody who struggles a lot with those big questions about your story, you feel like you have to solve these huge big picture problems, honestly spending more time in your document solving really small things and considering things from different perspectives will ultimately be in service of those big picture goals. So focus on the small, focus on the granular, and see what that does for you. Increasing the amount of hard writing that I was doing necessarily increased the amount of soft writing I was doing, which I think made me a better writer and helped me to see my story in a way that made it feel like a real story and not just something that's been sort of kicking around inside of my head for the last couple years. As an aside, I used to write a ton as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult. I'm 28 now, and I took a lot of time off after university, and I really haven't written creatively much at all. One of the big things holding me back, I think, is the fact that I used to consider myself pretty good as far as like my skills as a writer. For background, I went to university for English literature. I wrote creatively on the side. I wrote copy stuff for university clubs and societies and things like that. So I was doing it all the time. I was just more comfortable and more confident. And then as soon as I started working in corporate, I was doing less of that creative writing. And so I feel like my knife's edge grew dull. And so I was really nervous to start writing again without sort of getting back into it slowly. I was afraid of just jumping right in because the imposter syndrome was kind of eating me alive. I still feel that way a little bit, but I know to a certain extent that that's never going to go away. It's just something I have to make peace with. So I was very nervous about starting my writing journey back up because I didn't know if I was going to be any good at it anymore. And I'm happy to report that while I don't think I'm great at it, I do feel a lot more comfortable being bad at it. The last one that I really want to talk about is that I never lost faith in my story. This was something I was nervous that might happen. Just because you're spending so much time with your book, are you going to get tired of it? Are you going to get annoyed with it? I definitely had my doubts, and there were moments where I wasn't sure how I was going to work through a problem or get my characters out of this corner that I backed them into. but I knew that I would figure it out. And I think that confidence and trust within myself is a huge part of why I still feel excited about my story. And so that was a fear that I had going in that thankfully did not end up coming true, at least right now. Not to say that that can't happen in the future, it very well might, but at least for the purposes of this challenge, that wasn't the case, and thank goodness. Let's talk about the bad. The bad for this challenge was definitely the fact that I technically failed my original challenge. I know I revised it. I'm trying not to be mad at myself for falling short of that original 50K word goal, but the fact of the matter remains, I technically did fail. I technically did lose my November writing challenge. I think for me, this month was really an exercise in trial and error, figuring out what I like about the writing challenges, what has worked for me, and what I would probably take forward into future challenges. Next one, the bad. Cultivating a regular writing practice while working 9 to 5 and having other life responsibilities is not an easy thing to do automatically. And I don't think I really set myself up for success when it came to scheduling when I would write. And this kind of feeds into the second part of this point, which is just that my sleep schedule often was expected to pick up a lot of the slack because I ruined my sleep schedule in the month of November. I am usually a night owl, so it's not unusual for me to go to bed between 11 and 12. That's pretty standard for me. However, in November, I don't think I went to bed before midnight ever, and my most common bedtime was 2 a.m. Not great if you have to be up at, 8:30 to start work for 9:30. In the future, I would prefer to schedule my writing blocks a little bit better, just to make sure that I'm getting the most out of my time instead of kind of scrambling at the last second. I had the best intentions, and I think in practice, the planning piece is always the one I struggle the most with, and that was very much the case here as well. Okay, number 3. I got 2 migraines this month. I talked about this in, I think it was my second video, but I struggle with migraines pretty regularly. They're worse in the summer than they are at this time of year, so I thought I would be like free and clear, but I still did get 2 migraines. So that kind of derailed my progress and my motivation, and so that was really difficult. I think that weighed pretty heavily on me. Like I was feeling kind of down on myself for, feeling sick and not having the ability to push through. But I do think listening to my body and trying to do something when I was feeling a little bit better and trying to put some words on the page instead of fully just calling it a wash helped me to kind of still feel like I was doing something, even if I couldn't do as much as I was hoping to. Okay, last but not least, let's get into the ugly. Number 1, I wrote the entire month out of order. I don't think I wrote any chapters chronologically ever, which was a choice that I made, but I would encourage you to not make the same choice because it was very chaotic and I couldn't remember what plot points I had already talked about. I probably contradicted myself several times, and I'm not going to find out until the draft is finished and then I'm in revisions. So to future Emily, I am really sorry. I wish I had a better reason. I don't. Number 2, I wrote myself into several holes, and then instead of digging myself out of them, I just left it alone, and I would just switch to a different chapter. So I think I did a lot of like jumping around instead of seeing things through, which is not necessarily, again, it's not necessarily bad or good, but I do think it's going to make this a lot harder for me when I go to do revisions. Like future me is going to be so annoyed with November 2024 me because what was I doing? Truly, what was I doing? And I'm somebody who gets really overwhelmed when things don't follow a set structure. I crave structure, but at the same time I hate it. But I like when it's there. It's we contain multitudes. But I definitely feel like if I would have taken a more organized approach, a more systematic approach to my drafting process, that I would be better served. So if you are somebody who can do that, I would recommend doing that. And if you're like me and you need to be a bit of a chaos agent to get that first draft down, honestly, do whatever works for you. I just don't think moving forward that this is going to work for me. So I need to do a little bit of research and to go back to the drawing board on how to figure out my process so that I can find a routine that actually works for me instead of just chaos. And finally, reorganizing my Scrivener document mid-writing challenge. This is something that I did thinking it would be a game changer, that it would help so much. When I first started, all of my chapters were chronological and none of them were attached to specific characters. I would just put the character name at the top of the chapter, but there was no indication along the side panel. I also had it all set out in the draft, so I have 30 chapters right now. I think there's gonna end up being more, but for now we have 30 chapters. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like, I need to fix it, I need to change it, I need it to be different. Each of those chapters, and then creating 3 subfolders for each of my POV characters and dropping those chapters into those subfolders. And I think it just took me out of it because I realized that each mini draft was going to be incomplete. All it ended up doing was adding visual clutter to my writing process. I think I should have just left it alone and written it chronologically. If you're doing a writing challenge, I highly recommend that you don't touch it until after the challenge is done, because I didn't and I now regret it. That has been the good, the bad, and the ugly. So a couple things just as my closing thoughts, I guess. This month was crazy productive. I feel like I walked away a stronger writer, a more confident creator, and even more sure that the story that I'm telling is the one that I'm supposed to be telling. I wrote 30,000 new words. Those words did not exist before I started this challenge. And so if nothing else, I have to be grateful to this challenge for allowing me to do that. I also have a better grasp on my story than I ever have before, and that has been life-changing. And I've been able to share this journey with all of you watching. Joining AuthorTube is one of the best things that I think I've done for myself this year. It's given me a renewed purpose. It's given me motivation for my writing, but also it's just allowed me to feel connected to something that's larger than myself, which has made me feel for the first time in a long time like I'm where I'm supposed to be. Writing is something that's always been really important to me, but I was really afraid to get back into it over the last couple of years just because life has looked very different and I didn't know if I honestly could still do it anymore. So I'm happy to report that I am doing it. I don't know if I'm doing it well, but that honestly is none of my business right now. The fact that I'm doing it is enough. Now that I've done it, I honestly can't wait to do it again. To all of you, if you commented, liked, subscribed, or even just watched any part of my journey over the last month, I truly cannot thank you enough for being here, and I am so excited to see what 2025 has in store. So yeah, that's my reflection. It ended up being a lot more stream of consciousness than I was hoping. You know what they say about the best laid plans, but this has been the November Writing Diaries. Thank you so much for following along. I hope you liked this video. If you watched all the way to the end, comment this emoji in the comment section down below and let me know if you did a writing challenge this year. How did it go? If you haven't already, would love if you would consider subscribing to my channel. That is all she wrote, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.